Cool. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and wherever you are. Hello, and welcome to Redefining Productivity During Burnout. I like to kick things off with a little story time and some cute dogs. So, once upon a time, there was a good little dog who built websites and loved solving problems. She was a hard worker and loved her job, but after working so hard and so long, things began to change. When she woke up in the morning, her heart would race and her mind would race through all the things she had to do, and she did not want to get out of bed. Every morning, she would go for a run around the neighborhood, but she found that she couldn't breathe before she even started. When she spent time with friends, she had trouble focusing and being present in the moment. And dogs are known for living in the moment, right? At work, she started finding it difficult to think and solve problems. And as I said, problem solving was her thing. It's her superpower. It was like trying to work in another language. She thought, something is wrong with my brain. Maybe a brain boosting supplement will fix my brain. A very illogical thought for a very logical puppy. So then one day she sat at her desk. She was a lead developer, estimating, creating tickets, and doing backend development on 3 projects. Project A had one front-end developer every other week for 4 hours, and the client just asked for a new feature with quick turnaround. Project B had a team of developers, but an endless cycle of new complex features and quick deadlines. And Project C had one other backend developer, but there was a fixed impossible deadline. She was also 3 weeks away from Drupal Camp Asheville, where she was the lead organizer. Oops, our poor puppy was frozen with so many competing priorities. She didn't know what to do. She had to drop some of the balls she had been juggling, and she felt like such a failure. So in the words of Barack Obama, you can't let your failures define you. You have to let your failures teach you. Our puppy didn't fail alone. It wasn't all her fault. She wasn't set up for success, but she did say yes to too many things, and she wasn't managing her stress. Yes, the puppy is me. Hi, my name is April Sides. I am a senior developer at Lullabot. I am lead organizer of Drupal Camp Asheville, which will be coming up this summer. Stay tuned. We'll be virtual as well. And I am a member of the Drupal Community Working Group Community Support Team. But today I'm here to talk about my research and experiences with burnout. So what's burnout? There's a great resource at helpguide.org where I pulled a lot of the basic information about burnout in this presentation. So the help guide page states, burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. And I want to emphasize excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. So what does it feel like? There are physical signs and symptoms. So feeling tired and drained most of the time. Having lowered immunity, so you are frequently ill. Frequent headaches or muscle pains. Sometimes I have what I call stress neck, where I guess my neck is just tired of looking at the computer and stuff, but I'm like always moving it around and trying to massage things out. Change in appetite or sleep habit. So maybe, this is eating to avoid working, or having trouble going to sleep at night, or waking up in the morning. And there's a couple that I added. Shaky hands and eye twitches is something that creeps up. And this feeling like you can't breathe, and maybe you're like sigh a lot. You just be like, just constantly feeling like that, right? Then there's also emotional signs and symptoms. You can feel a sense of failure and self-doubt, like I'm not good enough, I can't cut it, everyone else can do it, but I can't. Feeling helpless, trapped, and defeated, not having control over the situation, having no end in sight. There's not enough time for all the things. That's pretty much where I go. Detachment, feeling alone in the world. Loss of motivation. Sometimes I do not want to sit at the computer. Increasingly cynical and negative outlook. Sometimes you think there's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way it is, right? And decreased satisfaction and sense of accomplishment. And I added, I think just one more here, lack of emotion or emotional regulation. So sometimes I can be very emotionally flat, and sometimes it's more like an emotional roller coaster. And then there are behavioral signs and symptoms. So I'm talking about withdrawing from responsibilities, and this could be like your home and life responsibilities, isolating yourself from others, which is kind of hard with COVID too, right? Procrastinating and taking longer to get things done, having trouble, focusing, thinking, and solving problems. Your brain may feel broken. I've had that feeling. Using food, drugs, or alcohol to cope, maybe, relying on stimulants to be productive and relying on depressants to go to sleep at night. Taking out your frustrations on others, that can come from that lowered emotional intelligence, that emotional regulation I was talking about. Skipping work or coming in late and leaving early, just trying to avoid the stress and avoid the environment where you feel the stress. And I think about this metaphor, if I'm going to tell someone that I'm feeling burned out, it feels like treading water in the ocean with nothing in sight and a feeling of sinking, right? So who's at risk? There are some personality traits that can put you at risk. Perfectionistic, a person who refuses to accept any standard short of perfection. Pessimistic, maybe you think negatively or you have negative self-talk. Controlling, you have a sense of needing to be in control, a very do-it-yourself attitude. A high achiever, hardworking, successful, 110%, no pain, no gain, right? And I added a couple to this list. People pleaser, people who want to keep others happy, right? Make and keep others happy. And selfless and caring. So putting others before yourself, taking one for the team, that sort of thing. And none of these are bad, personality traits. And, you may have all of them. You may have some of them, like, may have all of them like me, or you have some of them. But keep in mind, this just means you're predisposed, not predetermined, right? Just because you have some or all of these characteristics does not mean you're destined to burn out. You're just more likely than someone who does not have these characteristics. So what are the causes? There are work-related causes. Feeling like you have little or no control over your work, or having a lack of recognition or reward for good work. You may have unclear or overly demanding job expectations. I find this, working remotely, I always think, am I doing too much? Am I doing not enough? Like, where am I? Because it's really hard to gauge with your other colleagues. And then working in a chaotic or high-pressured environment. There are also some lifestyle causes. So working too much without enough time for socializing and relaxing, right? Lack of close supportive relationships. Taking on too many responsibilities without enough help from others. And not getting enough sleep. That's a big one. So then there are a few very specific things that have caused problems for me, which I call counterproductive productivity. These are things that we think make us more productive, maybe in the short term, but actually make us less productive in the long term. So we'll start out with notifications, right? Notifications are great in moderation. So our brains have been conditioned to receive a dopamine rush or a stress response every time we receive a notification. We want to know everything now. We want that immediate gratification. but every notification breaks our focus, and it takes about 25 minutes to regain focus after distraction. And everyone loves a good Slack integration, but this is one of the things that really affected me. We had automated notifications in the same channel as discussions with the team. So I spend a lot of my day playing Slack-a-mole, and it affected my ability to focus. I had Slack notifications on my phone, on my watch. During my morning run, I would receive notifications and it would trigger a stress response. So what can we do about this? We want to manage our notifications, right? So remove frequent notifications. I've cut back a lot of notifications like email. I don't want to know that I've received spam. Social media, I'll have like only the badge icon on my phone. So when I pick up my phone, I see I have a message. I still have calendar notifications to remind me about calls because that's important. But very recently, I turned off badge notifications on my Slack on my laptop so that, if I have it open, then I will see if I have a message. If I have it, minimized or whatever, closed because I don't want that distraction, I don't need an extra distraction, shouting at me from the dock. So that's kind of a cool thing that I figured out. Use do not disturb mode. So I also use the bedtime setting on my iPhone that enables do not disturb mode during sleep hours. I enabled a setting to automatically turn on do not disturb mode when I start a workout, which was the best thing ever. So I go for a run, I start the workout. I'm not going to have that stress response while I'm running, right? So when you need to focus, disabling notifications is a good place to start. But you can also block yourself from websites and apps that you find yourself distracted by, or set time limits on them. Do what works for you, make adjustments as needed. All right, there's no such thing as multitasking, only the illusion of it. It's called task switching. So our brains are not designed to multitask, so we task switch. And even computers task switch, right? They just do it really, really fast. So what do we do when our computer slows down or the battery is low? We close our browser tabs, applications, etc. When that doesn't work, we repair or replace the computer. Task switching requires energy and causes wear and tear. And doing it a lot can cause damage to computers and the human brain. So let's think about the replacement cycle. The replacement cycle of a smartphone is about 2.5 years. For laptops, between 3 and 5 years. But the human brain is irreplaceable, right? Don't abuse your brain like a computer or a smartphone because no one can replace you. So let's talk about the effects of task switching. Task switching can cause damage to the brain and the region responsible for empathy and emotional control. Just like notifications, it causes interruptions and time is lost in regaining focus. So it reduces concentration and focus. The switching causes a dopamine addicted feedback loop. For me, I can have moments where my eyes just literally dart around and I can't stay focused. And sometimes I have disjointed conversations where I switch topics every sentence. So task switching lowers your IQ and your emotional intelligence, can cause stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and guess what? Burnout. It affects impulse control and decision making. And it affects your creativity because creativity requires concentration. So if any of these things are ringing a bell for you, don't freak out yet. We're going to talk about how to repair the brain with self-care in just a little bit. Multiple monitors. We all love our elaborate multiple monitor displays. And I used to think that I was most productive when I was in my office with my laptop screen, my big monitor here, so much room for so many activities, but also a task switching notification trap. We think we can put Slack over in this corner and get this dashboard in this other corner, get email on the screen. We start to fill the extra space with distractions. Or we think, well, I can do something on this screen while I'm compiling or migrating or building on the other. Multiple monitors are useful when you need the space to compare things and that sort of thing. When you start to feel yourself task switching, try downsizing to one screen. It becomes very apparent when you're task switching, and it makes it a lot harder to do so. All right, so how do we avoid burnout? First, self-care is very important. So I think about this also as managing self-care habits, right? The best self-care comes in the form of good habits. So you can start by taking an inventory of your current habits, good, neutral, and bad. Focus on one change at a time. You don't want to try to change everything at once. So you can pick a habit, a bad habit to remove, or add a new one. Or add a new self-care habit, right? So I recently read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I highly recommend this book. In this book, he talks about building good habits by making them obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, and breaking bad habits by making them invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. And he also talks about habit stacking. It's kind of like an if this, then that, but it's like after an existing habit, then new habit. All right, so we need to form good habits that will take care of our bodies as well, right? So start with good sleep habits. Getting enough sleep, adjusting your sleep schedule. Right now, I gave this talk last fall, and these things are all still true. Right now, I'm retraining myself to get up to an alarm and not to snooze for an hour and not to social media scroll before getting up in an effort to get my workday started before noon. So this is an example that it is a process, right? Let's see. Nutrition, right? We want to have good nutritional habits, healthy eating and hydration, frequency of eating and portion size. When I recovered from burnout, when I had a big, burnout issue sort of hit a wall, I turned to eating 2 fun-sized Milky Way bars after lunch every day into having an afternoon strawberry banana smoothie because I wanted to add more fruit to my diet, and I also wanted to take an afternoon break from the computer. So right now, I'm still aware that I need to work on my snacking habits. I've actually done a lot better in the new year, believe it or not. Let's see. So we also need good exercise habits. This can be as simple as a daily walk or strength training, doing yoga, sports, cardio fitness. When I quit my high stress job, I shredded the stress and about 10 pounds. I was able to add multiple hills to my run and beat my times. It was amazing how much stress was holding me back before. So we also need to form habits that will take care of our minds. We'll start with relaxation. Relaxation habits are very important. This could be things like, the new hotness of adult coloring, right? Or just listening to music, watching a movie, journaling, meditation, whatever relaxes you, right? And I just want to point out that meditation doesn't really look like this for me. There's nothing wrong with that, but you do what works for you, right? So instead of the perfect sitting posture in the perfect outdoor location, I prefer to lay on my back for better body relaxation. I can meditate in my bed, on the couch, in the office, wherever. I once meditated on an airplane and in an airport. Remember those things? I hope we remember those things very soon. So when I meditate, I imagine this is what it looks like in my head, right? It's not about having a perfectly clear head and focused mind. It's a workout for your brain, building your focus muscles, right? So every time a thought pops into your head, stop it or kick it out. That's one repetition. You can meditate for as little as 1 minute. I like to not even track the time because time is a stressor for me. But the key to remember is that when you breathe in through your nose, expand your belly, not your chest. Because when you breathe into your chest, you stimulate the fight or flight response, and it makes your body more tense and increasing stress, right? So when you breathe into your belly and expand your belly, It relaxes your muscles and calms your nerves and helps release endorphins in your body that reduce pain. I also recently learned that if you're trying to reduce stress response in a specific situation or environment, it's better to meditate in that context. So when you feel the stress coming on, meditate in that moment. So there are a ton of apps out there now like Headspace and Calm. There's Fitbit has a mindfulness feature. My Apple Watch reminds me to breathe several times a day if I don't dismiss it. So while I don't have a meditation habit, this is very helpful whenever I was recovering from task switching induced burnout, right? So now I do it as I needed when I feel unable to focus, and I'm working on the contextual meditation now too. All right, so we also want to incorporate play into our lives. It's a great way to manage stress. I like to play video games. I've been playing Zelda Breath of the Wild a lot. Love it. It's so relaxing. Should totally check it out. So I like to play video games or build Lego. You could play board games with friends and family, put together a puzzle, free play with kids or pets, whatever sounds fun. We also want to build connection with the world around us, right? Spend time with people. I know it's really hard right now, but we're getting so close to being able to spend time with people again. I can't wait, right? Spend time with pets and animals. Be in nature. If you can't leave your home for COVID-19, consider getting some houseplants. Bring the nature to you, right? And find spiritual connection. Whatever that means to you. So in addition to self-care, we can learn to work smarter. We can start by building relationships at work, right? So build caring relationships with the people you work for and with. This will make it easier to raise flags when something's wrong. I tend to be shy with people I don't know well. So when I started at Lullabot, I made an effort to get to know my manager because I knew it would be easier for me to speak up and be honest when things weren't okay. And it also makes it easier for others to see when you aren't your normal self because you don't know your limit until you've reached it. And it's sometimes to know that you're burning out when you're in it. Build the caring support that you may need to check in on you whenever something happens, right? So I highly recommend checking out the book Radical Candor. It's mostly focused on the manager perspective, but there's a lot of great stuff in there for everyone, like realizing you can't be ambitious at work and outside of work. That's another recipe for burnout. So we can also manage our time and energy, Schedule focused time blocks for work and self-care. This will help you avoid task switching and make self-care another part of your day. I highly recommend the book Deep Work for tips on avoiding distractions. That's a really great book. Also think about, don't respond immediately to emails and messages. Let your immediate response be the exception, not the rule in times of emergency. And at the same time, don't expect others to respond immediately as well. This is a really hard one, but I think it creates this culture of humanness that we've kind of lost with like all this notification overload. Let's see, leave work at work. Deep Work talks about having a shutdown routine that signals the end of your day. So set boundaries and say no to protect your time and energy. It's a really hard thing to do, I know. There's a whole chapter in 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. And the book says, if yes has become your automatic answer, start saying, I'll have to look into that and get back to you. Then take a few minutes, consider what you want to do before you make any promises. And for the record, I struggle a lot with this because time stresses me out, but I'm always working to get better. And then from a project management perspective, make sure you have clearly defined deadlines and milestones and that the team is aware. Manage the pace of work, to ensure that your team doesn't burn out. And consider using an agile software development process. So agile development is all about iteration. You plan your work tasks in sprints. Sprints is kind of a trigger word, right? It's not mean that you have to like sprint and go as hard as you can. It's just a a thing that they use. But probably most important for preventing team burnout is the retrospectives, right? In retrospectives, at the end of each sprint, you can adjust the rules of development as you go in a way that works best for the project and team. It might be that you need to work really hard on 1 or 2 sprints to meet a deadline, but you can follow it up with 1 or 2 easier sprints, right? So if you're not familiar with Agile, there are a ton of resources and certification trainings available on the interwebs. So how do I get out of it? All right, so if you're already trending toward burnout, treading water, drowning, how do we get out of this? The quickest way to recover is to stop everything, but it's not always ideal and not always an option. But for extreme cases, when your health is compromised, you may not have a choice. So if you can't stop everything, identify the light at the end of the tunnel for when you can schedule time off. And this may require working with your manager or client, right? So start by reviewing your priorities, focus on one top priority, delegate and postpone other responsibilities. Think about your home responsibilities. Maybe you hire a house cleaner or a dog walker, whatever, to kind of pick up the slack there. For work responsibilities, delegate your work to your team or pay a contractor. And this can be temporary. It's just to get you through the tunnel to your time off. And also determine what and when is done. Adjust arbitrary deadlines. If you need a Band-Aid fix, see if you can take a long weekend. Recovery takes time. So the more time you can take off and focus on self-care, the faster the recovery. So when you take time off, take time off. So once you've identified the light at the end of the tunnel and you've identified your top priority, communicate. Let your team, manager, or client know your plans. Ask for help with tasks when they're hard. This was a recommendation from my project manager last summer when things were getting a little wild. I have a tendency to want to do it myself, right? But asking for help really is a sign of strength because it allows the problem to be solved faster and cheaper. So you can reach out for help in your work Slack or community Slacks. Like you could use the Drupal Slack where the Florida camp is also talking. And then codementor.com provides a network of folks that can help. So you can hire them by the hour for very specific help and request a non-disclosure agreement if you need that. Last year, I helped someone understand Git and how to set up her development workflow. So it was kind of cool. And then embrace flexibility in your schedule and environment. And I'm speaking to managers here as well, right? To allow your teams and employees flexibility when things are rough. In your schedule of work hours, work in the mornings or at night, whenever you're feeling most productive. Don't spin your wheels solving a problem. Take a break, go for a walk. When you return, you'll have a fresh perspective. That was something that I learned, I think last year, and it's been working great. Flexibility in your environment. A lot of folks are probably still working from home now. I work remotely, so it can be a little easier to kind of relocate. But I find that I like to work from the patio or the kitchen table or the couch outside a coffee shop, wherever you feel productive, right? Practice self-care as you're able to. You don't want to take on full habit management when you're in burnout. For example, this is not the time to stop smoking. Take breaks, time away improves your productivity, and do relaxation activities that you're able to, right? So like meditation, it's like 1 minute, 3 minutes or more. This can help with that feeling of not being able to breathe. It also helps with focus. But it can also be really hard to do when you're stressed. Also think about like just watching a movie or an episode of a show. This was my go-to last summer. It allowed me to relax, to get away from my computer and my phone and just get lost in the Marvel universe. Most importantly, use positive self-talk. I often beat myself up over arbitrary standards, like getting to work early in the morning. Doing that adds stress and makes things harder. You know, once I embrace the flexibility, I'm able to get things done. So just remember, this is a journey of imperfection. You know, there are a ton of books, articles, tips, and tricks out there. Whatever you do what works for you and what helps you be the person you want to be. So I mentioned before the help guide, helpguide.org has some great information of like the facts of burnout. There's also something called Thrive Global. So Ariana Huffington of Huffington Post created the company called Thrive Global. She created it after she collapsed from burnout and hit her head on her desk in her office. It was kind of a wake-up call, right? So the goal of this company is to end the epidemic of stress and burnout. So I recommend checking that out. I think she also has a book, but I haven't read that yet. But I do follow Thrive Global on Twitter so I can see new articles in my feed. These are all the books that I mentioned, and I have the slides are actually on the session page on the website with links to them. But Atomic Habits is really great, Radical Candor, Deep Work, and 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. These are two books that I also recommend, but I didn't reference in the slides. So there's one, Get Your Stuff Together, maybe another replacement word there. The author talks about having a stress-induced panic attack, right? And how she made changes in her life. She's also really funny and has a lot of great tips and some other books too. So I highly recommend checking her out. That's Sarah Knight. And then The Myth of Multitasking is a really quick read, but has a lot of great information about multitasking and task switching, right? So that's all I have today. So thank you for having me. And does anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much, April. There's a lot of great information in there. I was wondering if maybe you can share the code mentoring link that you referenced as well.
Yeah. It's codementor.io, I believe. But I'll, let's see.
Thank you.
Double check. Yep. So I haven't been monitoring the chat, so I don't know if anybody has actual questions.
People were agreeing with you, laughed at your joke, and yeah,
Covered it
generally
all.
agreed with things.
Nice.
Thank you so much. I'll stop the recording now in case people want to hop on and ask questions but don't necessarily want to be on the recording. Oh, someone asked a question. How can you support someone that seems to be experiencing burnout?
That's a tough one. So I actually had some experience with that with my wife, who is an elementary school teacher, and I could tell, like I could just tell these same things that I've been dealing with before, I could see them in her. And so you don't want to just be like, oh, you're burned out, you should do this, you should do that. Like you just have to like maybe make subtle suggestions, or even really just bringing it to light. Because I would say when I was in burnout, I didn't think I could burn out, right? Like that's for the weak. I don't know. Like it's not going to happen to me, right? I mean, we all have that kind of attitude at some point. So really just kind of acknowledging that like something is wrong and that I need to make changes in order to get out of this and to fix it. So just being supportive and understanding, because like I was talking about also the emotional roller coaster of it and the emotional intelligence, and you might get yelled at or snapped at, right? In certain situations, and just kind of understanding that it's not really them, it's probably coming from a symptom of what all the other stuff that's going on, right? How long can it take to recover from burnout? It takes as long as it takes. Right? So I said, the quickest way to recover is to stop everything, right? Which is not always possible because you may have to work for a living. You have to pay the bills, you have to feed yourself, your family, or whoever. So, a lot of it is just taking time away from the thing that has caused the burnout, as much as you can, and really working on those self-care things. And, it may be, it's a journey of imperfection. It's not going to go away immediately. But, I think a lot of it comes from building new habits and removing the bad habits and really trying to rebalance, things in your life that really, helps with that recovery. And just acknowledging that it's a journey of imperfection. I still, last summer was really hard for me because I was doing a lot. I was converting Drupal Camp Asheville from an in-person camp to a digital camp. I'm like, oh yeah, we can do this, but it's a completely different thing. And so we were doing this totally new thing in the middle of a global pandemic, and it just, things happen, and it's learning how to respond to that, learning to respond better in ways that are better for you.
Thank you so much. A lot of what you said makes sense, and I kind of want to add to the fact that when I was in the middle of a burnout, I didn't listen to anybody either. But listening, I was like, no, I'm not. But then listening to their suggestions, or like you said, bringing things to light, made me realize it. So yes, that makes
It's a
sense.
subtle art to confronting someone that is, going through something that affects emotional intelligence.
For sure. Okay, I think I'll stop the recording. Thank you so much again. But feel free to stick around because there is still some time, but people might want to ask questions or discuss maybe off the recording. So thank you
Cool.
again.
Yep. Thanks.